Activist ambushes Melania at a charity event. Her response makes everyone stand. Sarah Chen stared at her phone, her finger hovering over Emma's latest hospital photo. Her little sister looks so small in that big white bed, tubes snaking around her like some twisted garden. The image blurred as tears welled up in her eyes. Miss, are you okay in there?" A knock on the bathroom door startled her. Just a minute." Sarah quickly wiped her eyes and straightened the borrowed waiter's uniform. The black vest was a little loose, but it would have to do. She'd spent 2 weeks working as a temporary dishwasher just to get access to this uniform. The face that looked back at her from the mirror was barely recognizable. Gone were her usual activist t-shirts and the purple streak in her hair. Instead, she saw someone who could blend in with the catering staff at Manhattan's fanciest charity events. Someone invisible. "This is for you, Em," she whispered, touching the phone screen one last time before slipping it into her pocket, already recording. Outside the bathroom, the Plaza Hotel's kitchen was chaos. Dozens of real servers rushed around, carrying trays of appetizers and champagne. The Children's Future Foundation's annual gala was in full swing upstairs. "Hey, new girl!" A harried-looking man in a chef's coat grabbed her arm. "Where have you been? Take these up to the ballroom. And remember, serve from the left, clear from the right." Sarah grabbed the tray of champagne flutes, her hands trembling slightly. "Yes, chef," she managed, grateful that her voice didn't crack. As she navigated through the kitchen, memories of the past 3 years flooded her mind. 3 years earlier. "But why can't I go outside, Sarah?" Emma's voice was small, muffled by the surgical mask she had to wear even indoors on bad air quality days. Sarah sat on the edge of her sister's bed, trying to keep her voice light. "Remember what Dr. Rodriguez said? Your lungs need a break today. But hey, I brought that new Harry Potter book you wanted." "I hate this." Emma pulled the mask down. "Lily's having her birthday party at the park today. It's not fair." Sarah's heart clenched as she gently fixed the mask back in place. "I know, Squirt. I know it's not fair." That night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep, Sarah had started researching. Environmental policy changes, rolled back regulations, increased industrial emissions in their area. The more she learned, the angrier she got. She joined protest groups, started making videos, tried to raise awareness. But nothing changed. Emma kept getting worse. Present day. The elevator dinged, snapping Sarah back to reality. She took a deep breath and stepped into the ballroom. The contrast between the kitchen and the gala was stark. Everything sparkled, the chandeliers, the jewelry, the fake smiles. Sarah moved carefully between tables, offering champagne while scanning the room. "Have you seen her yet?" A woman in a red designer dress asked her companion. "Melania? No, but security's been checking everything twice. She's definitely coming." Sarah's heart rate picked up. She timed this perfectly. The former First Lady was scheduled to give her speech in 2 hours. Plenty of time for Sarah to establish herself as part of the background. "Hey, you!" Another server waved her over. "I'm Jake. You must be new. I know everyone here." Sarah forced a smile. "First day." "I'm Sandra." Jake grinned. "Stick with me, Sandra. I'll show you the ropes." These charity events are always the same. Rich people pretending to care about problems they could solve by writing one check. For the next hour, Sarah followed Jake's lead, learning the rhythm of the room. He showed her where to get fresh glasses, how to anticipate when someone wanted a refill, which guests were likely to be demanding. "That's Mrs. Henderson over there," he whispered. "Old money, very particular. And that's Senator Brooks by the window. He always wants the organic appetizers, even though they're exactly the same as the regular ones." Sarah nodded, cataloging everything while trying to keep her hands steady. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, still recording. Emma would be getting her evening breathing treatment right about now. "Ladies and gentlemen." A man in an expensive suit stepped up to the microphone. "Welcome to the Children's Future Foundation's annual gala. Please find your seats. Dinner will be served shortly." The crowd began to move, a choreographed dance of wealth and social status. Sarah watched as place cards were checked and chairs shifted. "Sandra," Jake called. "We need to clear these empty glasses before the first course." As Sarah helped clean tables, she overheard snippets of conversation. Heard they raised $12 million last year. My daughter's private school just opened a new wing. The Trump years were better for business, you have to admit. Each casual comment made her anger burn hotter. These people lived in a different world. They'd never watched someone they loved struggle to breathe. A commotion near the entrance caught her attention. Men with earpieces were doing another security sweep. Melania would be arriving soon. All servers. Report to the kitchen for final dinner service instructions. The catering manager's voice carried across the room. Sarah followed the other servers downstairs, her mind racing. Everything was going according to plan, but her courage kept threatening to fail her. She pulled out her phone during a quiet moment, looking at Emma's photo again. The most recent text from their mom glowed on the screen. Emma's oxygen level's better tonight. Doctor says maybe home tomorrow. She misses you. Where are you? Sarah hadn't told her family what she was planning. They wouldn't understand. Her mom worked 2 jobs just to pay Emma's medical bills. She couldn't risk rocking the boat. All right, listen up. The catering manager stood on a chair to address the staff. Mrs. Trump's security team has done their final check. Service begins in 15 minutes. Remember, this is our highest profile event of the season. No mistakes. Sarah's hands were sweating again as she arranged salad plates on her tray. Upstairs, she could hear the event chairman beginning his introduction. Soon Melania would take the stage to talk about helping children. The irony made Sarah's teeth hurt. Jake appeared beside her, looking concerned. You okay, Sandra? You're looking a little pale. I'm fine, Sarah said quickly, just nervous. First day and all. He patted her shoulder. You're doing great. Just breathe. These fancy events can be overwhelming at first. Breathe. Such a simple thing. Unless you couldn't. Sarah took her position by the kitchen doors, waiting for the signal to begin serving. Her phone was still recording in her pocket, capturing every moment. Soon, it would capture something much more dramatic. But for now, she waited, feeling the weight of her sister's suffering, of 3 years of ignored protests, of countless nights spent in hospital rooms. The rich voices of the gala's attendees washed over her like a wave of oblivious privilege. Soon, she thought, soon they'd have to listen. The first course went out smoothly. Sarah moved between tables like a ghost, her tray balanced perfectly as she'd practiced countless times at home with stacks of books. Every time she passed near the stage, she studied the podium where Melania would soon stand. You're a natural, Jake whispered as they crossed paths near the kitchen. Sure this is your first day? Sarah managed a weak smile. Fast learner, I guess. A woman at table 6 waved her over. She wore a diamond necklace that probably cost more than all of Emma's hospital bills combined. Excuse me, the woman said, barely looking at Sarah. This salad has candied walnuts. I specifically requested no nuts. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'll get you a new one right away. As Sarah turned to head back to the kitchen, she heard the woman mutter to her companion. Really, the help these days. The help. That's all they saw when they looked at her. It had made infiltrating the event easier, but it also made her blood boil. These people lived in their privileged bubble while others suffered. Her phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from her mom. Emma asking for you again. Where are you? Please call. Sarah's vision blurred. She ducked into a service corridor, pressing her forehead against the cool wall. Images flashed through her mind. 2 months ago. Code Blue, pediatric ward. The hospital intercom crackled to life. Sarah's head snapped up from where she'd been dozing in the waiting room chair. That was Emma's ward. She ran down the hallway, ignoring the nurse's calls to stop. Emma was having one of her worst attacks yet. The doctors worked frantically while Sarah watched through the glass, her nails digging into her palms until they bled. Later, when Emma was stable again, Sarah had made her decision. No more polite protests. No more ignored petitions. No more watching her sister suffer while the people in power attended their fancy galas and patted themselves on the back. Present day. All servers to the kitchen. The catering manager's voice carried through her earpiece. Mrs. Trump has arrived. Dinner service pauses during her speech. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as she hurried back to the kitchen. Through the service doors, she could hear the excited murmur of the crowd. I heard she's wearing Valentino, one of the other servers whispered. Did you see all those Secret Service guys? Jake asked, joining Sarah by the coffee station. Man, I'd hate to be the poor soul who causes trouble tonight. Sarah's hands shook as she arranged coffee cups on her tray. Why? Why so much security? Are you kidding? After all the protests lately, rich people are paranoid, especially the political ones. Jake shrugged. Not that anyone could get past all that security anyway. If he only knew. The event chairman's voice boomed through the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our honored guest speaker. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering Emma's face this morning on their video call. The dark circles under her eyes. The way she had to pause between words to catch her breath. You okay? Jake touched her arm. You look like you might pass out. I'm fine, Sarah said automatically. Just tired. A burst of applause filtered through from the ballroom. Melania must have taken the stage. All servers, hold positions, crackled the earpiece. No service during the speech. Sarah moved closer to the service doors, peering through the small window. She could see Melania now, elegant and poised at the podium. The former First Lady was speaking about children's literacy, about giving every child a chance at a better future. A better future. Sarah thought about Emma's future, if she even had one. About all the other kids like her, struggling to breathe in cities with worsening air quality. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket, still recording. In her other pocket was the small handwritten note she'd stayed up all night perfecting. Her manifesto, her truth, her sister's story, everything she planned to say when the moment came. Jake appeared beside her again. Speech should last about 20 minutes, then we start dessert service. You're on tables 1 through 4 with me. 20 minutes. Sarah nodded, barely hearing him. 20 minutes to gather her courage. 20 minutes until she either changed everything or lost everything. The room beyond the doors was silent now, everyone captivated by Melania's speech. Sarah could hear phrases floating through. Our sacred duty to protect children. And building a brighter tomorrow. Empty words. Pretty promises. While real children like Emma, suffered. Sarah's hands had stopped shaking. A strange calm settled over her as she listened to the speech continue. She thought about Emma's first asthma attack, how small and scared her sister had looked in the emergency room. She thought about all the nights spent researching environmental policies, writing letters to politicians, organizing protests that no one paid attention to. Well, they'd have to pay attention now. Through the service door window, she could see Melania reaching the middle of her speech. The moment was coming closer. Sarah touched her phone one last time, making sure it was still recording. For the children, she whispered to herself. For Emma. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered like a diamond cave. Melania Trump stood at the podium, her voice carrying clearly through the state-of-the-art sound system. And so, when we think about protecting children, Sarah's hands wouldn't stop trembling. She stood behind a massive marble pillar, her serving tray long abandoned in the kitchen. Jake had tried to stop her when she'd walked away from her station. Sandra, what are you doing? We're not supposed to leave the service area during the speech. She'd ignored him, weaving through the shadows at the edge of the room. Her phone was heavy in her pocket, still recording everything. She thought about Emma, probably sleeping now in her hospital bed. Oxygen mask fogging with each labored breath. The Children's Future Foundation, Melania continued, has made remarkable progress in promoting literacy among underprivileged youth. Last year alone. How can you stand there and lie? Sarah's voice exploded from behind the pillar. The words ripped from her throat before she could second-guess herself. Her legs were moving, carrying her into the bright lights of the main floor. Security guards materialized instantly. Black suits, earpieces, faces hard as stone. But Sarah was beyond fear now. Miss, don't move! One guard reached for her arm. Don't touch me. Sarah yanked away, tears streaming down her face. She pulled out her phone, making sure it was still recording. Everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to know the truth. The ballroom had frozen. Hundreds of faces stared at her, shocked, angry, afraid. Crystal glasses stopped midway to parted lips. Forks hovered over half-eaten desserts. My name is Sarah Chen, her voice cracked with emotion. And while you're all sitting here congratulating yourselves, my little sister is fighting for her life. 2 more security guards were approaching slowly, trying to flank her. But before they could reach her, something unexpected happened. Melania raised her hand. Wait. The guards hesitated. In the sudden stillness, Sarah could hear her own ragged breathing, could feel her heart trying to hammer its way out of her chest. "Please," Melania said, her accent thicker with tension. "Let her speak." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Someone gasped. Mrs. Henderson from Table 6 clutched her pearls so hard the string might snap. "Let her speak?" A man in an expensive suit stood up. "This is outrageous. She's clearly a plant, a provocateur." "Sit down, Richard," snapped an elderly woman nearby. "Some of us want to hear what she has to say." Sarah's prepared speech, the careful manifesto in her pocket, had disappeared from her mind. All she had left was raw truth. "My sister Emma is 12 years old," she said, her voice shaking. "She's been in and out of hospitals for 3 years because she can't breathe. Do you understand? While you people sip champagne and pat yourselves on the back, there are kids dying because of the policies you supported." She pointed at Melania, who hadn't moved from the podium. "Your husband's administration gutted environmental protections. Did you fight him on that? Did you even try? Or were you too busy planning parties like this one?" "Young lady," a silver-haired man interrupted, "this is hardly the appropriate forum." "When is it appropriate?" Sarah screamed. The phone in her hand shook as she pulled up Emma's photo. "Look at her. Look at my sister. When is it appropriate to talk about children who can't play outside because the air is poisoning them?" More security personnel were filing into the room. Sarah could see Jake in the doorway to the kitchen, his face pale with shock as he realized Sandra wasn't who she'd claimed to be, but Melania was still holding up her hand, keeping the guards at bay. She hadn't taken her eyes off Sarah. "You talk about literacy," Sarah continued, bitter tears falling freely now. "About books and education. Emma loves to read. Did you know she won her school's reading contest last year? She read 30 books in 1 month. But now she can barely get through a page without having to stop to catch her breath." The room was so quiet you could hear the ice melting in abandoned drinks. Sarah's chest felt tight, like she was experiencing a shadow of what Emma went through every day. "Last month," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that somehow carried through the silent room, "Emma had a severe attack. Code Blue. Do you know what that means, Mrs. Trump? It means my baby sister almost died. While your foundation was planning this fancy dinner, my sister's heart almost stopped because she couldn't get enough oxygen." Sarah's legs were shaking so badly she thought she might fall. But she forced herself to stay upright, to keep her phone steady, to keep recording. "Your security is going to arrest me in a minute," she said, looking directly at Melania. "That's fine. I don't care what happens to me. But before they do, I want you to know something. I want everyone in this room to know something." She took a step closer to the stage. None of the guards moved to stop her. "Emma doesn't blame anyone. Even now, even after everything, she still believes people will do the right thing if they just understand. She still believes in goodness." Sarah's voice broke completely. "She's a better person than me. Because all I feel is rage. All I see is people like you. People with power. People who could help but choose not to." Melania's face had lost its practiced polish. Something real was showing through the careful mask she usually wore at public events. "So go ahead," Sarah said, spreading her arms wide. "Have me arrested. But you can't arrest the truth. You can't silence all the Emmas out there. And you'll have to live with yourself, knowing that while you give speeches about helping children, real children are suffering because of choices you supported, policies you defended, changes you could have fought against but didn't." She expected the guards to grab her then. Expected to be dragged away, her point made but ultimately meaningless. Another viral video that would be forgotten in a week. What she didn't expect was for Melania Trump to step away from the podium and walk straight toward her. The security team tensed, ready to intervene. The crowd held its collective breath. Sarah stood her ground, though her heart was trying to beat its way out of her chest. Melania stopped just a few feet away. Up close, Sarah could see that the former First Lady's eyes were glistening with unshed tears. "Show me," Melania said softly. "Show me picture of your sister." Sarah's hands trembled as she held out her phone, Emma's hospital photo glowing on the screen. Melania looked at it for a long moment, really looked, not just a polite glance. "What is her name?" Melania asked again, her voice carrying in the dead silent room. And just like that, the script Sarah had planned, the confrontation she'd imagined, began to shift into something entirely unexpected. "Emma," Sarah whispered, her voice catching. "Her name is Emma." Melania touched the phone screen gently, as if she could reach through it and touch Emma herself. "She has your eyes," she said softly. The crowd was still frozen, watching this unlikely moment unfold. Sarah could hear whispers rippling through the room. "Is this some kind of publicity stunt? Should we call the police? Why isn't security doing something?" But Melania seemed oblivious to the murmurs. She was studying Emma's photo with an intensity that made Sarah's anger falter slightly. "These machines," Melania said, pointing to the equipment surrounding Emma's bed in the photo. "I have seen them before, when I visited children's hospitals. They are for severe cases, yes?" Sarah nodded, thrown off balance by this unexpected response. She needs them when the attacks are bad, sometimes for days at a time." Mrs. Trump, a man in an expensive suit, interrupted, stepping forward. "We really should continue with the program. Perhaps this young lady could make an appointment through proper channels." "Number?" Melania's voice was firm. She turned to face the crowd, but stayed close to Sarah. "We talk about helping children. Here is child who needs help. Here is sister who fights for her. We will listen." The man sputtered. "But the schedule." "Schedule can wait." Melania's accent was stronger now, her carefully practiced public speaking cadence giving way to something more raw and real. "This is why we are here, no? To help children. Not just to talk about helping, but to actually help." Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she almost dropped her phone. This wasn't how she'd expected things to go. She'd prepared for anger, for arrest, for being dragged out while screaming the truth. She hadn't prepared for this. "Your sister," Melania said, turning back to Sarah. "She is in hospital now?" "Yes." Sarah swallowed hard. "Mount Sinai. She had a bad attack 2 days ago. The air quality." "Tell me," Melania interrupted gently. "Tell me everything. Not just about hospital. Tell me about Emma. What does she love? What makes her smile?" The security team was still tense, but they backed away slightly. The crowd was absolutely silent now, leaning forward to hear Sarah's response. Sarah's voice cracked. She took a deep breath. "She loves Harry Potter. She's read all the books 3 times, even though sometimes she has to stop reading because she can't, because breathing gets too hard. She wants to be a writer someday. She keeps a journal, even in the hospital. Tears were flowing freely down Sarah's face now. "She never complains. Even when it's bad, even when she's scared, she tries to make everyone else feel better. She tells jokes to the nurses. A sob escaped before Sarah could stop it. "She's the strongest person I know, and I'm watching her suffer. And nobody with the power to help seems to care." Melania's own eyes were bright with tears now. Without warning, she reached out and took Sarah's free hand in both of hers. "I care," she said firmly. "Maybe I did not show this enough before. Maybe I was, how do you say, too diplomatic. But I care. And you are right. We must do more than just talk." The man in the expensive suit cleared his throat again. "Mrs. Trump, while this is all very touching, we have hundreds of guests waiting." "Then they will wait?" Melania said, not taking her eyes off Sarah. "Or they can leave. But this girl, this sister who loves Emma so much she would risk everything to tell her story, she has waited long enough." Sarah felt her knees go weak. The adrenaline that had carried her this far was fading, leaving her shaky and uncertain. A chair appeared behind her. Jake had quietly slipped from the kitchen to provide it. "Sit," Melania said kindly. "Tell me more about Emma. Tell me about doctors, about treatments, about everything you have tried. Tell me what needs to change." As Sarah sank into the chair, she realized her phone was still recording. But somehow, it didn't seem as important anymore. The viral confrontation she'd planned had transformed into something else entirely. Something real, something unexpected, something that might actually make a difference. And in a hospital room across the city, Emma slept peacefully for the first time in days, unaware that her story was about to change everything. The Plaza Hotel ballroom had transformed. Gone was the practiced glamour of a high society charity event. The carefully orchestrated schedule lay forgotten. Servers stood frozen with trays of untouched desserts. The crowd that had gathered to network and be seen now sat in stunned silence, watching an impossible conversation unfold. "Tell me about the day you first noticed something was wrong with Emma," Melania said softly. She had pulled up a chair to sit across from Sarah, their knees almost touching. The former First Lady's security detail hovered uncertainly, clearly uncomfortable with this breach of protocol. Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. The phone had stopped recording minutes ago, the battery finally giving out. But it didn't matter anymore. Nothing was going according to her plan, and somehow that felt right. "It was during her soccer game," Sarah began, her voice rough with emotion. "She was 9, the star player of her team, but that day she couldn't. She kept stopping to catch her breath. We thought maybe she was coming down with something." "She plays soccer?" Melania asked, genuine interest in her voice. "Played," Sarah corrected bitterly. "She can't anymore. Some days she can barely walk up a flight of stairs without her rescue inhaler." From somewhere in the crowd, a woman's voice called out, "My grandson has severe asthma too. The medications are so expensive." "Quiet, Martha," someone hissed. "This isn't a town hall." But Melania turned toward the voice. "No, please, share your story too. This is what we need, real stories, real problems." Sarah watched in amazement as the elegant older woman stood up, clutching her designer handbag like a lifeline. "Timothy's medications cost over $800 a month, even with insurance. We can afford it, thank God, but what about families who can't?" "We can't," Sarah said quietly. "Mom works 2 jobs. We have to choose sometimes, pay for Emma's medications or pay the rent." A heavy silence fell over the room. These were people who had never had to make such choices. "When I first came to America," Melania said suddenly, her accent thicker with emotion, "I learned quickly that appearance is not reality. Beautiful surface can hide many ugly truths." She reached for Sarah's hand again. "You were brave to break through that surface tonight." Sarah laughed harshly. "Brave? I snuck in here. I stole a uniform. I planned to humiliate you on camera." "Yes," Melania nodded. "Because you love your sister. Because you tried other ways, and no one listened." She turned to address the crowd. "How many letters did you write? How many protests did you attend?" "Dozens," Sarah whispered. "We tried everything. Petitions, social media campaigns, reaching out to politicians, but nothing changed. The air got worse. Emma got worse." A man in an expensive suit cleared his throat. "Mrs. Trump, while this is all very moving, perhaps we should discuss solutions rather than dwelling on problems." Melania's eyes flashed. "You want solutions? First, we must understand problem. Really understand, not just nod and write checks and feel good about ourselves." She turned back to Sarah. "Your sister. You have photo of her before she became sick?" Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled up an older picture on her dying phone. Emma at 9, grinning in her soccer uniform, holding up a trophy. Her cheeks were flushed with health and victory. "This is Emma," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "The real Emma. Not the one who spends more time in hospital beds than her own bed. Not the one who has to check air quality reports before she can go outside. This is who she's supposed to be." Melania studied the photo for a long moment. "She has warrior spirit. I see it in both pictures. In hospital bed, she is still fighting. She shouldn't have to fight just to breathe." The words burst out of Sarah before she could stop them. "Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm just so angry all the time now." "Do not apologize for truth," Melania said firmly. "Anger can be good if we use it right way. Channel it into change." From another table, a different voice spoke up. A young man in a tech entrepreneur's casual blazer. "My company is developing air purification systems for schools. We could start a pilot program. Our foundation has connections with several pharmaceutical companies," added a woman in a red dress. "Perhaps we could discuss prescription assistance programs." Sarah's head spun as more voices joined in. People were standing up, offering resources, suggesting connections. The same crowd that had recoiled from her outburst was now engaging, awakening. "You see?" Melania squeezed her hand. "Sometimes it takes one person to break silence. to make others remember their humanity. I never expected. Sarah wiped at her tears with her free hand. I thought you'd have me arrested. For telling truth? Melania shook her head. I have been silent too often. Diplomatic, yes. Playing safe role. Maybe it is time for me also to speak more truth. She stood suddenly, still holding Sarah's hand. Everyone, please, take out phones. I want you to see something. The crowd rustled as hundreds of phones appeared. Melania held up Sarah's phone, showing Emma's hospital photo. This is not a political issue, she declared. This is not about left or right, Democrat or Republican. This is about children who cannot breathe. About families choosing between medicine and food. About futures being stolen by air that poisons. Sarah watched in amazement as Melania's polished public persona cracked further, revealing something fierce and genuine underneath. I have attended many galas, Melania continued. Made many speeches. But this young woman, who came here ready to risk everything for her sister, she shows us real meaning of charity. Of love. We must do more than talk. More than write checks. We must listen, then act. The room erupted in applause, but Melania waved it away. No, no applause. Applause is too easy. I want commitments. Real commitments. She turned to Sarah. Your sister, she is at Mount Sinai now? Sarah nodded, thrown by the sudden question. Room 412. Mom's with her. Good. Melania turned to her chief of security. Change of plans. After this, we go to hospital. Mrs. Trump, the security chief stepped forward. That's not on the schedule. We'd need to coordinate with the hospital security, arrange clearance. Then coordinate. Melania cut him off. This is more important than schedule. She looked back at Sarah. If you permit, I would like to meet Emma. To hear her story in her own words. Sarah's vision blurred with fresh tears. She'd love that. When she was little, she used to say she wanted to be First Lady someday, to help people. Melania smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Then she already understands job better than I did at first. First Lady should be bridge between people in power and people in need. I think tonight, your sister helped remind me of this. Around them, the ballroom was buzzing with energy. People were exchanging cards, making calls, forming impromptu committees. The carefully planned charity gala had transformed into something organic and alive. I'm sorry I called you names on my protest videos, Sarah said suddenly. I didn't know you. I just saw a symbol. We all do this, yes? See symbols instead of people. But tonight, we break through symbols. Tonight, we see each other. Sarah's phone buzzed weakly with its last bit of battery, a text from her mom. Emma's asking for you again. Her breathing's better. Where are you? Melania read the message over her shoulder. Come, she said, standing. Let's go tell your sister that tonight, she helped change more lives than she knows. Jake appeared at Sarah's elbow, still in his server's uniform. Sarah, I saved your bag from the kitchen, the one with your real clothes. Sarah felt a wave of guilt. Jake, I'm so sorry I lied to you. He shook his head, smiling. Are you kidding? This is the most real thing I've ever seen happen in this place. Here. He handed her the backpack. Go change. I'll make sure nobody throws away your evidence. He gestured at her phone. While Sarah went to change out of the borrowed uniform, Melania addressed the crowd again. Her voice carried through the ballroom doors to where Sarah stood in the hallway. Tonight was supposed to be about Foundation's achievements. Instead, it became about our failures. About children we have not helped enough. This is good. This is necessary wake-up call. Sarah emerged from the bathroom in her own clothes, worn jeans, a faded t-shirt with an environmental slogan. She felt exposed without the server's uniform, but somehow stronger. More herself. The crowd had transformed too. People were huddled in groups, making calls, sharing contact information. The woman who'd spoken about her grandson's asthma was deep in conversation with the tech entrepreneur. The man in the expensive suit who tried to stick to the schedule was now earnestly discussing hospital costs with a group of Foundation board members. Ready? Melania asked as Sarah approached. She'd taken off her designer jacket, looking somehow more approachable in just her silk blouse. I still can't believe this is happening, Sarah admitted. I thought I'd end up in jail tonight. Instead, you may have started something important." Melania touched her arm gently. Sometimes biggest changes come from smallest moments of truth. A distinguished-looking man approached them, his security badge identifying him as the hospital's chief of staff. "Mrs. Trump, we've arranged everything. The hospital is ready for your visit." Sarah's phone had finally died completely. "I should call my mom, warn her we're coming. She's going to think she's hallucinating when she sees you walk in." "Use my phone," offered a young woman who'd been hovering nearby. Sarah recognized her as one of the foundation's junior executives. "I'm Caroline, by the way. I'd like to help. Maybe set up a task force to look at environmental health impacts on children?" More people were gathering around them, offering cards, phone numbers, resources. The security team was trying to create a path to the exit, but kept getting stopped by people wanting to help. "Write everything down," Melania instructed her assistant. "Every offer, every contact. Tomorrow we begin real work. Tonight." She looked at Sarah. "Tonight we meet Warrior, who inspired it all." As they made their way through the lobby, Sarah heard snippets of conversation from departing guests. "Can't believe we never realized. My company could definitely contribute to air quality monitoring. About time someone spoke the truth." Outside, the warm night air wrapped around them. Sarah took a deep breath, thinking about how Emma couldn't do the same. "You are worried?" Melania asked, noticing her expression. "What if?" Sarah hesitated. "What if nothing really changes? What if tomorrow everyone forgets and goes back to normal? Then, we remind them." Melania's voice was firm. "Every day if we must. You broke silence tonight. Now we keep it broken." The sleek black SUV was waiting for them. As Sarah climbed in beside Melania, she caught a glimpse of their reflection in the tinted window, the former First Lady and the girl who'd crashed her party, sitting together like old friends. "Tell me more about Emma," Melania said as they pulled away from the curb. "What will she say when she sees us?" Sarah laughed softly, imagining her sister's face. "She'll probably try to sit up and be proper, like she practices from her princess movies. Then she'll get excited and forget to be proper and start talking a mile a minute until she runs out of breath. She sounds delightful." "She is." Sarah wiped fresh tears away. "She makes everything better just by being her. Even the nurses fight over who gets to work her floor when she's in the hospital." The city lights blurred past the window. Sarah thought about how differently this night had turned out from what she'd planned. She'd wanted to shame, to accuse, to force people to see. Instead, "I've been so angry for so long," she said quietly. "I forgot that sometimes people can surprise you." Melania took her hand again. "Anger is like fire. Can destroy, yes, but can also forge new things. Tonight, your anger forged bridge between two worlds. Now we use that bridge to help Emma. To help all Emmas." The SUV turned onto the street where Mount Sinai Hospital towered against the night sky. Sarah's heart began to race again, but this time with hope instead of fury. Sometimes the biggest changes really did come from the smallest moments of truth. Room 412 was quiet, except for the soft beeping of monitors and the gentle hiss of oxygen. Emma Chen lay sleeping, her small frame dwarfed by the hospital bed. Her mother sat in the worn visitor's chair, head nodding as she dozed. The click of the door opening made Mrs. Chen startle awake. "Sarah, where have you been? I've been trying to." She froze mid-sentence, mouth dropping open, as Melania Trump walked in behind her daughter. "Mom," Sarah said quickly, "I can explain everything." "Mrs. Chen," Melania stepped forward, extending her hand. "Your daughters, both of them, are quite remarkable." Emma stirred at the voices, her eyes fluttering open. She blinked several times, as if not trusting what she was seeing. The oxygen mask fogged with her quickening breath. "Easy, sweetheart," Mrs. Chen said, reaching for her daughter's hand. "Don't get excited." But Emma was already pushing herself up, wincing slightly. Her eyes were huge as she stared at Melania. "Are you?" She paused to catch her breath. "Are you really here? Or did they give me too much medicine?" Melania laughed softly, moving to the bedside. "I am really here. Your sister Sarah. She helped me understand some very important things tonight." Emma's gaze shifted to Sarah. "Is that why you've been gone? Were you with?" She had to pause again, breathing deeply. With Mrs. Trump? It's kind of a long story, Sarah said, perching on the edge of the bed. I did something pretty crazy. She did something very brave, Melania corrected. May I sit? She gestured to the empty chair. Mrs. Chen nodded mutely, still looking shell-shocked. Tell me, Emma, Melania said once she was settled. Your sister says you want to be writer? Emma's face lit up. Yes, I'm writing a book about a girl who can control the weather. She makes the air clean so everyone can breathe again and… She broke off, coughing. Sarah quickly adjusted her sister's oxygen mask. Slow down, Em. The story's not going anywhere. But it's Mrs. Trump, Emma protested once she caught her breath. From the White House. And she's here, in my boring hospital room. Not boring. Melania shook her head. This room, it is where real stories happen. Like your story, Emma. Will you share it with me? For the next 20 minutes, Emma told her story, with frequent breaks to breathe. She talked about her old soccer team, about missing school, about the doctors and nurses who'd become like family. She showed Melania the journal where she wrote her stories, the pages filled with her neat handwriting and carefully drawn illustrations. This one, Emma pointed to a drawing of a girl standing on a mountaintop, is my main character. She's strong and brave, like Sarah. Yes, Melania agreed, like Sarah. Mrs. Chen had finally found her voice. I don't understand. How? Why are you here? Sarah took a deep breath. Mom, I need to tell you something. I kind of crashed a charity event tonight. To confront Mrs. Trump about the environmental policies affecting kids like Emma. You what? Mrs. Chen went pale. But instead of having me arrested, Sarah continued quickly, she listened, really listened, and then… She gestured at the room. Here we are, Melania echoed. And here is where we begin to make changes, real changes. She turned to Mrs. Chen. Your daughter made me see what our fancy galas and speeches were missing. The real faces, the real stories of children affected by these policies. Emma was beaming behind her oxygen mask. Sarah's going to be famous, like a superhero. No, Squirt. Sarah squeezed her hand. But maybe we can help make things better. Mrs. Trump has some ideas. Please, Melania interrupted. Call me Melania. She pulled out her phone, checking some notes. Already tonight, we have commitments from several foundation members. Technology company wanting to install air purification systems in schools. Medical groups offering assistance programs for medications. Mrs. Chen's eyes filled with tears. We've been fighting so long, making calls, writing letters. Sometimes it takes one moment to break through walls, Melania said. One person brave enough to speak truth. She looked at Sarah. Or crazy enough to crash party. Emma giggled, then coughed. Everyone reached for her at once, but she waved them away. I'm okay. Tell me more about the party. Did you wear a fancy dress, Sarah? Actually, Sarah grinned. I wore a stolen waiter's uniform. Sarah Chen, her mother gasped. But Melania was laughing. She made quite entrance. Very dramatic. Like in a movie? Emma's eyes sparkled. Better than movie, Melania said. Because this story, it does not end tonight. Tomorrow we begin real work. She turned to Mrs. Chen. With your permission, I would like Emma to be part of new Children's Health Council we are forming. Her voice, her experience. These are valuable. Me? Emma squeaked. You, Melania nodded. Your sister showed me that we need to listen to real stories. And you, Emma Chen, are excellent storyteller. A nurse poked her head in. I'm sorry, but visiting hours are technically over. It's okay, Melania stood. We have much work to do tomorrow. Emma needs rest. Will you come back? Emma asked quickly, then remembered her manners. I mean, if you're not too busy. I will come back, Melania promised. We are partners now, yes? All of us. She hugged Emma carefully, mindful of the tubes and wires. Then she turned to Sarah. Thank you, she said softly, for being angry enough to act, but open enough to listen when moment changed. Sarah felt tears threatening again. Thank you for proving me wrong about you. Now, Melania addressed the whole family. Get some rest. Tomorrow we begin changing things. Small steps first, then bigger ones. But always moving forward. As they walked out, Sarah heard Emma whisper to their mother. "Mom, Sarah brought the First Lady to my room. Wait till I tell my nurses." In the hallway, Melania's security team was waiting. But before rejoining them, she turned to Sarah one last time. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "in all my years of public life, no one ever crashed my party to tell me truth before. Perhaps they should have." Sarah managed a watery smile. "Maybe next time just answer your mail and we can skip the drama?" Melania laughed. "Deal." She squeezed Sarah's hand. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we have press conference to announce new initiatives. Time to take your sister's story to bigger audience." "Really?" "Really. No more hiding behind polite speeches. Time for real stories, real changes." She started to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Sarah? Keep waiter's uniform. As a reminder that sometimes craziest plans lead to best outcomes." Sarah watched her go, then slipped back into Emma's room. Her sister was already dozing, a smile on her face beneath the oxygen mask. Their mother looked up. "I still can't believe. Sarah, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking about Emma," Sarah said simply. "I was thinking it was time someone really listened." Outside the window, the city lights twinkled. Somewhere out there, people from the gala were making calls, setting things in motion. Change was coming, not in one dramatic moment, but in the steady steps that followed. Emma stirred slightly. "Sarah?" she mumbled. "Did that really happen?" "Yeah, it really did." "Good," Emma sighed. "'Cause I already wrote it in my journal. New story. About a girl who changed the world by telling the truth." Sarah smiled, settling into the chair beside her sister's bed. Sometimes the truth was enough. Sometimes it was everything. The night shift nurses kept finding excuses to peek into room 412, whispering excitedly among themselves about their unexpected VIP visitor. Emma dozed off and on, each time waking with a start to make sure it hadn't all been a dream. "Sarah," she whispered during one of her wakeful moments, Do you think things will really change now?" Sarah moved to sit on the edge of the bed. "I think they already are, Em. Look." She showed Emma her new phone. Her old one had finally died at the gala, but one of the foundation members had insisted on giving her a replacement to keep telling the story. Social media was exploding with clips from the event. Emma's story was trending. "Oh my gosh." Emma tried to sit up straighter, then coughed. Sarah quickly adjusted her oxygen mask. "Easy, superhero. The world can wait a minute." Their mother had stepped out to call their aunt, still trying to explain the unbelievable turn of events. Through the door, they could hear fragments of her conversation. "No, Mary, I'm not making this up. The actual Melania Trump. Yes, in Emma's hospital room." Emma giggled weakly. "Mom sounds like she's going to explode." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. It was Jake, still in his server's uniform, looking somewhat out of place in the hospital corridor. "Hey," he said awkwardly. I brought these from the gala." He held up a bag of fancy desserts. "Thought Emma might like to try what she inspired." Emma's eyes lit up at the sight of the elaborate pastries. "Are those really from the fancy party?" "The fanciest," Jake grinned. "Though, if you ask me, the company got a lot better after your sister crashed it." He set the bag down on the bedside table. "Oh, and Sarah? The video from your phone? It's everywhere. People are really listening." Sarah's own phone buzzed with incoming messages. The foundation's junior executive, Caroline, had created a group chat with several of the gala attendees. "Caroline, emergency meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m., bringing in environmental health experts. Sarah, can you join by video call from the hospital? Tech entrepreneur. Air quality monitoring systems ordered. Installation starts next week at schools in highest risk areas. Martha, the grandmother, connected with 3 other families facing similar struggles. We're organizing a parent advocacy group." "What are they saying?" Emma tried to peek at the phone. "They're saying," Sarah swallowed past the lump in her throat, "that my crazy little sister inspired them to actually do something instead of just talking about it." "I'm not little," Emma protested, then yawned hugely. "No, you're not," Sarah agreed. "You're the biggest force for change I know." The night deepened outside the hospital windows. One by one, the messages slowed, as even the most energized advocates headed home to sleep. But in room 412, Sarah kept vigil, watching her sister's chest rise and fall. Her mother returned, looking exhausted but somehow younger, as if a great weight had begun to lift. The hospital administrator called, she said quietly, not wanting to wake Emma. They want to make Emma's case part of a new study on environmental health impacts. And, she took a shaky breath, they're waiving our outstanding bills. Sarah felt tears threatening again. Mom, I'm sorry I didn't tell you what I was planning. I just... Shh. Her mother pulled her into a tight hug. You did what I've wanted to do for years. You made them see. You made them listen. Emma stirred slightly. Mom? Sarah? Is Mrs. Trump coming back tomorrow? Sleep, baby, their mother soothed. There's plenty of time for visitors tomorrow. As if on cue, Sarah's phone lit up with a text from Melania. Press conference scheduled for 2 p.m. tomorrow, but I come to see Emma first at 10. She should practice her princess wave. Cameras will want to meet brave girl who inspired change. Tell her to rest well. Big days ahead. Sarah showed the message to her mother, who shook her head in amazement. When you were little, she said softly, I always told you girls, you could change the world if you were brave enough to try. I just never expected that I'd do it by committing multiple crimes and crashing a fancy party. They both laughed, then quickly stifled it when Emma stirred again. Outside in the city, air quality monitors continued their silent vigil, measuring the pollution that had sparked this unlikely revolution. But something had shifted tonight, as surely as the tides. In boardrooms and living rooms, people were waking up to the truth that had been there all along, that sometimes the smallest voices carried the biggest messages, and that real change began with really listening. Sarah settled back in her chair, holding her sister's hand. Tomorrow would bring press conferences and initiatives, meetings and momentum. But for now, in this quiet room, she watched Emma sleep, and knew that sometimes the craziest plans were the ones that worked. Sometimes the truth, simply told, was the strongest force of all. And sometimes a stolen waiter's uniform could change the world.